this is going to be fun. I haven't given this one before. This is something called Fauxpen Data. And you've probably heard a lot open data. So Fauxpen Data is the little neologism I pulled off the web earlier this week. Actually, before that, when I proposed this Ignite, and I thought that I should talk about this idea that sometimes open isn't really open. And I was looking back, actually, when I visited the Microsoft offices in DC and went to see these incredible new glass doors that are touch sensitive, and you can touch them, and I was typing in different queries into Bing to see what would come back. And it started making me think way back to the original web. So yesterday I actually saw Tim Berners-Lee at the Open Government Partnership. You haven't heard about that. There's a gigantic global partnership that was launched, 44 countries joining together to try to do open government. Open data was part of that. In the 2000s, of course, people moved well beyond the web and started to use their mobile devices and using social media. This is a picture from the Green Revolution, the Iran election, and the contested election afterwards. And people managed to connect to one another, to share their stories far and wide. And talk about a target audience. You all know about big data, right? You know that looking at the petabytes moving back and forth, exabytes, we can probably keep going to the queues, et cetera. Thinking about how that collective intelligence works together changes things. Well, open data, when countries start to open up, changes things as well, right? It allows there to be a different relationship between the countries and the citizens. It turns into working with citizens to do things collaboratively, allows the citizens themselves to use the data, mash it up. When cities release their transit data, for instance, working with the private sector, they can start to do some extraordinary things and put things into the pockets of citizens. It's no longer about websites, right? It's about web services. That's the whole first idea of Web 2.0. And certain other kinds of behaviors exist as well. This is a map of Haiti after the earthquake. People came together from all over the world and helped to map out the devastated Port-au-Prince using OpenStreetMap. It's a picture of all the roads that grew up afterwards. And you're starting to see, with the release of open government data from, say, HHS, here with open health data, mobile applications that are founded upon that enable citizens to make better decisions and enable them to connect with nearby providers, learn more about what they need to do with that's nearby. Of course, there's other kinds of open data too, right? This is a picture of WikiLeaks graphed up and looking at Baghdad, so casualties. So if you think about the talk we heard earlier where crowdsourcing is moving into crime sourcing, you get to an interesting perspective. Open data in Afghanistan, right? Here's a picture of elections. This is the first time you really could see, when they did unprecedented data collection, mapping out where the different turnouts were and also to understand where some of the problems were. This is a nifty Venn diagram from openhalton.ca, which is an open government website up in Canada, looking at how these different things come together. And you start to see some of the different intersections between what's possible and the different relationships between them. Here's the trouble. A lot of things get called open that aren't. We're starting to see things like an open graph, right? Or you call this open source even when it's not. So when you think about whether something is open, you need to look at the licenses, the terms of service, governance, all these different things. And it's not like this is a new topic, right? People have been creating open source, making open code. They've been doing open data for a while. Now we're starting to think about, well, how do we hold people accountable when they say something is open or not? So opendefinition.org, opendata.gov.org. This is a personal problem I have. I write about open government a lot. That's what I do for O'Reilly. I live in DC. So I end up with a lot of PDFs. Now the problem with PDFs is not that they aren't really wonderful for sharing certain things. They're great to read, but they bury the data. Right? If you're going to release data, don't bury it in something where someone has to munge it. It makes it much more difficult to get to the end result. Open science, something that's starting to grow as a movement. Instead of open government principles, you look at open science principles. What does that mean? Well, here's a map of Safecast. This is actual radiation data that was collected collaboratively in Japan after the earthquake there and then subsequent tsunami. Citizens collected that. Government released some of it. In between, they came up with something interesting. Here's the other thing, and this is where it gets a little less happy joy. There's a data divide that's growing. Here's a light divide, right? There were places of the world that have power and those that don't. If you think about where citizens are and the access to information they have, you need to be thinking about the way that they can get access to the information that they need. So it's no longer just about a digital divide, there's a data divide. And the risk is that by releasing data, you don't actually help the people who need it most. One of the ways that that can be done is by connecting the digital world with the real world. Here's a sign, or someone has created an open source LED that's connecting the real-time data in Somerville with people on the street. You don't have to have an expensive device. You can just see what's happening in the world around you.